Okay.
Got it.
And now we're going to go live. Let's just get us going here. And all right, so we are now live. So welcome everybody. This is our Traumaplicity talk show. My name is Dr. Amanda Helman on my Amanda Helman author and speaker Facebook page. I'm so glad you're all here. And I'm so honored we have Traumaplicity talk show. It's trauma plus simplicity. And what that means is that we take trauma and we take simple steps to a complex process in our brain to look at one simple step at a time through different traumas, whether it be acute, which is still matters. Acute is one trauma, one event, think car accident. It could even be a rape. It could be something, they all matter. They're all impactful to us. Or it can be ongoing traumas that happen over a long period of time and many different types and combinations. And so no matter what the trauma, it does matter and it impacts us all differently. And so that is Traumaplicity. So this is a place where you can hear different strategies about different people and how they have taken simple steps and have overcome some things and are in the process of overcoming things. So with that said, I have my friend, Christina Sanchez with me. And Christina, I've known for maybe a couple of years. We do different things with entrepreneurship and she's very creative, gifted, and works a lot, and she'll be sharing, I'm sure, but works a lot with moms or moms to be and advocates and does a lot with the community. So Christina, I know you have a lot more to share, but I definitely really enjoy Christina. She's a great heart for people and for community. So if you want to share more on your leadership and who you are.
Hi, Amanda. I'm so glad you invited me to be part of your Traumaplicity. I believe heavily in what you're doing, and I'm so proud of you for what you're doing and all the people you're helping. So a little bit about me, I'll do the abbreviated version. I am a wellness consultant and coach, and so I have my professional training background is as a dietitian nutritionist, and then I'm also a mosaic artist. And I'm doing some training in expressive art therapy because I find that creativity has helped in that journey of my wellness, and it's an ongoing process. And so I believe so much in just wellness and being whole, and we have to kind of learn a little bit more about ourselves in order to go forward. And so I'm excited with what you're doing and just the collaboration with some of the things that we've been able to share. So you asked me to kind of choose a traumatic event and I had so many things to choose from. But I chose what happened in October 17th of this year, which was a horseback riding event or, an accident.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I was not injured too bad. Okay, so no internal injuries and that sort of thing. But the reason I chose that particular event was because at this point in my life, I had resources and tools in place to help me through that trauma, things that I did not have from childhood and other times. Yeah. And so a little bit about that event, I fell off the horse. I was not necessarily traumatized as much as just sort of a little bit of shock. My friend took me to the hospital and she happened to be a nurse. So she was able to kind of walk me through what was happening. But some of the procedures I went through was brand new for me. I'd never had a scan and all that. So all of that was new. I wasn't fearful or scared, but I knew it was affecting me on some level because it was brand new. We were there for several hours. And because I was classified as a trauma, I got pushed to the front of the line. So it was kind of a blessing and not such a blessing. So really left the hospital. And it wasn't until about 3 days later, I was feeling, just the physical achiness, the bruising, but I found a few days in, my mind each day was kind of spinning. And I was rethinking about the event. And it wasn't, again, about this fear from a fear perspective. It was more about just kind of getting me to all these these feelings of hopelessness started to come. And I'm like, what is that about?
Mhm.
Because it seems so unrelated to the horseback riding, right? So I reached out to some key people in my life, and you were one of them. The first person, she said, trauma can open doors to a lot of different things. And so I happen to have my spiritual beliefs, which are a core part of my life. And a part of those doors that can be open are spiritual doors, which, if you have past trauma that hasn't been dealt with or you're unaware of, it can also just sort of come up to the surface.
Yeah.
And she said, you need to nip this in the butt and get some trauma healing. So that's where I connected with you. Prior to connecting with you, we wind up meeting later in the week. I talked to a relative who's a horse professional, because I had to kind of like, could I have done something different? Was it my fault? You know, like you process and your mind's kind of like going around and around and trying to put it in some sort of organization, right?
Mhm.
At least for me. And so anyway, I was able, number one, to show, so having experienced a little bit of just working with you prior to that as well, learning about trauma, being curious about how the brain works, I was open for feedback, and I was able to identify, okay, I'm feeling hopelessness. What is that about? I was able to pause and say, this is not good, as opposed to just sitting in it, right? In the past, it would have just kind of like, I want to get isolated and
Oh.
who knows. So 3 days in, I was able to say, okay, something's not right here. I'm feeling these feelings that are becoming really heavy, really oppressive. I'm feeling like I want to give up on all this, on everything. It just was so big. So through the course of that, I also opted to not do the hardcore pain medication. I didn't feel I really needed it. So I was just kind of doing over the counter. Um, again, that can open the door if you're heavily medicated. So for me personally, I was okay just doing, whatever, the ibuprofen and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So by the time you and I met for our first meeting, not only do you have that just special anointing to kind of accelerate healing with that, but the time we spent together, it opened the door to reveal another trauma that was further down. And so all this sort of stuff was sort of being revealed and encapsulated in this place with you. And yeah, it allowed me to kind of take stock of something, and also to kind of move forward. So really it wasn't about the horseback riding, it was about something deeper. And you were able to walk me through that. And then when we finished our time together, because I chose that route, I chose to address it, do a spiritual route, to do allowing God in on that. He was with me after meeting with you and helping me process it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And he gave me revelation
Mhm.
about what that was about. And he clarified that whole thing, if I had not taken the initiative to get help, it was an attack from the enemy. Basically, the words were, every time you try to get up or take like territory in your life, I'm going to be there to knock you down again. So stay down. So God revealed that. That is what the enemy was trying to do. But for the fact I reached out and was able to shift and get just incredible healing that I'm still unpacking. And you were a facilitator in that, and you were part of that journey. So that is kind of where I wanted to kind of to present and kind of allow you to, if you have any questions of you want me to ask to go deeper.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, no, and I again, like for audience, if you're watching and if you have questions, I actually didn't know what Christina was gonna talk about tonight. Like I know she's bringing up something that we went through together, but she could have done anything, but that was on her heart. So just I had no idea. So I'm learning. I'm remembering when we met and how you had that horseback and there was a lot of pain. And I remember that night where we just were able to process. And because, you have faith, and I work with believers and unbelievers, but because you were so in sync with that, you were able to identify the roots of some things that were deeper for sure. And getting to that, and it was almost like a bunch of stuff that then you felt more safe, right? You felt more grounded. And there was healing physically, not just emotionally.
Yeah.
That was happening in that. And it was that ongoing it could be sometimes generational. And sometimes it can be like an individual pattern where that was a trauma that happened to us. And then every time that happens, we start having cycles of emotions that come and try to hit us. And so, and that happens to everybody, every human, I believe, in different capacities. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And if you're in the audience, you may relate to something where maybe there's ongoing different things, or then there's pain points, or it reminds you of something from childhood or something else. And that's kind of what you're sharing, Christina. So I don't know if anything else is coming up with that. I was going to ask you, and I know you shared some of the simple steps that you've used. Obviously, like you met with me, you had some reflection time, but are there any other simple steps maybe related to that trauma point, even from with the horses, right? Because sometimes when people have an event like this, all of a sudden it's hard for them to get back onto horses, or for example, go to the ocean or whatever happened. And so could you maybe speak to some of the people out there that have had something happen, and how can they get breakthrough maybe those first simple steps that you did to help you? Because I'm not sure you've been back with horses now, have you?
Yeah, so I don't personally own a horse, and I don't ride that often. However, I reached out to somebody that's a horse professional because, again, I didn't want to have a fear of horses, and I needed to process that with her. And I gave her I said, be completely honest, because if I missed the mark or something I could have done differently. And she walked me through it. And she said, this is what should have happened according to the horse owner, and just step by step. And she trains people. She's been riding her whole life. And so she's very, very knowledgeable. And so she was able to give me a really good objective perspective, and put it into context for me, because that was another thing. I was spinning in my head going, oh my gosh, maybe it was my fault. And then she said, at the end of the day, Christina, even the best rider can have a bad day and fall or get, kicked off a horse. And it's quote an accident. And so just reaching out to somebody that knows about horses specifically to that event. So for example, if that happens to you, or a dog bite or something along that line, perhaps reaching out to somebody that knows about that particular type of event. If it were something that was more like disaster related, there are people who deal specifically with that too. So I think whatever that big question mark that you may have that's looming, that's making you potentially feel this fear of the unknown, that's what I would maybe tap into, get more information and resources on. The second thing I did was I reached out to a spiritual mentor who I just expressed just briefly what had happened, and that I was like feeling these overwhelming feelings. And she immediately said, you need to reach out to get some trauma healing. And so that was my second thing that I did. I went to a mentor, somebody that has wisdom about just going through a crisis, because even if you're the most highly educated, together, organized person, a crisis or trauma can knock you off your feet, literally and emotionally, to where you feel like completely like a child, like, what do I do here? And so, don't be hard on yourself if you feel completely vulnerable and childlike, like, I don't know what to do. Don't be embarrassed. That's the human experience. I think you can speak to that for sure about, that it's unexpected, and we don't have all the answers sometimes, and to be okay to ask for help. Does that kind of answer a little bit?
Yeah, I think, and I know you had talked about just mentors, but having people to go to, and like you said, now you knew more, you had more resources, you knew sort of who to ask, whereas maybe before you didn't have that. So it again, depending on like what you know and
Mhm.
what you continue to shift in. And so that helped with it, but also for other people, if they to ask for help. And like you said, just because there's times where we don't know. There's
Right.
times where we're not sure. We're navigating to learn what we don't know, or having other people,
Yeah.
do that. Maybe that's not our forte. So I think that's a good point, Christina, is that sometimes we don't know. And even when I go through working with different people and they have different backgrounds, like there's a lot I don't know. And there's a lot that God fills in, there's a lot that God fills in or that I don't know and people might share, but I'll hear and I'm able to then really work with them. And I love it because I feel like even in it, we have that exchange, as like a lot of release of emotions, but they get something. And that's my favorite part. I always get excited. People are like, what? I'm like, yes, that's so fun because I get to hear like what they're seeing but it is, again, and sometimes I don't know at first, or sometimes there's blocks, and sometimes the block comes like this. I've had people who aren't even believers where bam, we go back to, to the crib and bam. And then there's times where it takes more time because depending on the layers, depending where the person's at and how much has been blocked, it takes some time, and even for you, like you had no idea that what happened to you then. There was part back when you were younger, which if you know me, and I know we've talked to Christina as well, I'm a big believer in the roots. There are initial child events and events over generations that have to get broken through. So anyway, but no, I think that's great. Like what you provided, those simple steps, which seem not simple, but simple is just asking for help sometimes.
Right.
And then we can have shame and guilt with that, but knowing that you can have safe people. So Christina, and I'm not sure if there's anything else from that you want to share, anything else that's coming up that you want to share to the audience. I just want to give you that time if there is, before I ask you another.
Yeah, I think it's not like a beginning, like a perfect start and end point. Like I feel it's a process. So that journey's continuing for me, but in a good way. And just allowing yourself that time to continue to kind of walk through it, and be patient with yourself, because I think sometimes we might try to real quickly get back into our old routine. But at the same time, our routine may change a little bit, but if we notice that it's changing to the point like, oh my gosh, I'm finding out if you're just shifting to accommodate, like, okay, I was a little achy and physically hurting, but if it's covering up something that I need to continue to go deeper on, and just doing heart checks, checking in with yourself. And I think I got to just briefly hear part of what you were talking about today about checking, like you're taking care of yourself, right? Because I think there's an expectation that we gotta either bounce back really quickly, especially if we don't have people around us, to tell us, to give us feedback, like if you're single person, you don't have people that are in your space all the time to go, you're kind of like something's up, right? And so I think having those trusted people in your life, maybe one or two that can say, I give you permission to say, you know what, you're something's off, or you're a little snappy, or are you sleeping okay, or how's your eating, and just kind of like giving them permission, knowing you just came out of a trauma, and giving them the parameters, like it's okay for you to maybe say this, but I don't, you know what I'm saying, and allow them to do that, because it's about helping you to move forward. if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it makes sense. And I do. And I was on just kind of talking about our internal dialogue. So much of it, our internal dialogue is whether we go forward or not. And our internal is whether we get help or not. So our internal is like how we think, we believe, we act. And so it takes a lot to unravel that, those different nuances of our life. So I would agree with you. And even as you were saying, like, having the different components, even like the nutrition, everything,
Mhm.
all matters, and being kind to yourself as you go through the process for sure. Yeah, and I think those are important points, that you were sharing. And I love that you brought up that one trauma that can go back in time. So I know, like, as we're shifting, I usually ask like 3 questions, and I love
Yes.
that we talk and process that, because I had no idea, but I love that we got to talk about it. But I wanted you to encourage the audience. So we have different people, and I love to have different people on with their different backgrounds and perspectives.
Mhm.
But what would be encouragement that you give to somebody? Maybe they didn't fall off a horse, maybe they did, but maybe they've had experiences and they're similar to other
Mhm.
ones, or perhaps they're just like, whoa, that really hit me hard, and now I'm having these thoughts. What's a word of encouragement that you can share for them today?
Well, I think for me, I've experienced different types of trauma through my life. Some I knew about, some I didn't know about. And I think here's a perfect example of one particular trauma. It was a situation I got myself into was when I was younger. And because I kind of was part of the decision and involved in a bad decision, it's almost like, well, can I truly have PTSD? Can I truly have trauma from that because I made the choice and I did it? Absolutely. A bad choice can result in trauma. So it doesn't have to be, quote, an accident and you had no idea it was coming.
Yeah.
You could be actively making a choice that you don't know is a bad one or an unhealthy one. And it takes you from point A to point Z, and you're like, how the heck did I get here? Now I have so much shame and embarrassment. I can't tell anybody because I chose to do it. And
Yeah.
it locks you down in such shame and pain, and you don't want to tell anybody about it because it's almost like you're afraid they're going to go, well, you kind of chose to do that.
Yeah.
And that's where you need to know that there are people like you and others out there who are like, no, that's not truth. You made a choice, but that's not your identity. That's not who you are.
Yeah.
And we make mistakes in life, and the beauty of it is that we can rebound from it if we have people that are that we can go to that are and it may not be your close friend. It may not be. Sometimes you have to choose somebody that is not close in your circle or not a family member because there's baggage there, right? And you need to maybe go to somebody that can be objective with you, that can say, hey, look, I get it, and I'm here to support you and help you through that. And so I think that would be one of the biggest things, because I didn't know I was experiencing PTSD for many years from a choice that I made that I didn't even know I was experiencing PTSD. But my life is kind of going wonky and cycling, and I'm like, and then when it finally came up as to what it was, the core root of it, I thought, well, isn't that kind of my own fault? And they're like, no, that's So I think that would be the biggest thing for anybody that's walking in shame or pain or just that incredible, just wanting to not reveal any of their, quote, deepest secrets. Every area can be redeemed. Every area can be healed. And it's just a matter of taking it out of the dark into the light and finding that person that you can go to and go, oh my gosh, you mean I'm not this horrible person? And and because we have something to share, and all of our junk that's kept us in this place of hiding, and I'm this horrible person. Once you come out and it gets revealed, you can use, that's your superpower. That is your superpower to help other people. So our story is our power.
Yes.
That would be my one major takeaway, and brave to come to you and then go back to you. And I can't say enough about you, because I'm a little biased, but you're good at what you do, and you have a heart for people, to be healed and whole, and you create such a safe space. And so that is something I can't say enough about. And truly.
Thank you. I mean, honestly,
I know.
I love what I do. I love what I do. And, I love it because it's not you get to experience it for yourself. I do, there's
You've
questions
walked
that
it through.
yeah.
You, yeah, that's your life,
Yeah, I've walked it too. And there is compassion, but I love that. And I think you have that heart too. Like, that's how we are so we have a lot of similar passions because we want people, and I think most people do, we want to see people whole. Sometimes people don't know how to go there. They're scared because they've never known anything other than not being whole. And
Right,
that's scary because what is my identity
right.
without junk? And that's scary because then it unravels all the other stuff, and that's not easy.
Yeah,
But I do appreciate your heart for healthy communities, healthy people, and then it
mhm,
takes time. And each person to unravel that stuff, it takes time.
yeah,
Take off all that stuff, So no, I enjoyed this time. I'm glad that you could encourage the audience. The audience definitely, Christina Sanchez, amazing. And I've done different things like retreats with her and nutritional talks with her and sleep routines. So she's passionate in that area, and I love that. So thank you so much, Christina Sanchez, for being here.
thank
Audience, if
you.
you have questions, certainly write in for Christina. If you have questions or comments, we'd love you to do that, post away. Otherwise, we are finished with this week's episode of Traumaplicity. It's on every Wednesday at 7 p.m. unless I say that it's a different time due to technical stuff. But we're on every week on the Amanda Helman author and speaker page. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.